future praying church is going to do the exact same thing to bring in a global harvest and stand against the Antichrist.
And that brings us to a really crucial balancing act. According to this framework, there are two central themes of the tribulation period. On one hand, you have the primary theme, God's active judgment against an evil empire. But right there on the other side is the secondary theme, the intense trials and tribulation that believers are going to face. The syllabus makes a strong argument here. Any generation facing these unique dynamics won't have the luxury of sitting on the sidelines. It's going to require absolute active involvement. Moving into part 2, we're shifting gears to look at unveiling the majesty, the man behind the plan.
So as we shift our focus from those massive global events to the absolute center of the text, a really massive argument in the syllabus emerges. It points out that so many of us get completely distracted by the apocalyptic stuff. The beasts, the bowls, the dramatic judgments. We see the plan, but we completely miss the actual purpose. And that purpose is revealing the majesty of the man behind the plan. The curriculum notes that Revelation chapters 1 through 3 are designed first and foremost to reveal the heart and the leadership of Jesus as history transitions into the age to come.
Get this, 30. That is the exact number of distinct descriptions of Jesus' personality, his ministry, and his majesty found in just those first 3 chapters of Revelation. 30. The syllabus points out that this is actually the most complete picture of Jesus in the entire Bible. It's all there to prepare the church for a global release of glory by highlighting truths about him that, honestly, we often neglect. All right, part 3, let's talk about the Son of Man, prophet, priest, and king. To really understand these 30 descriptions, we have to understand his absolute favorite title. The number 85 represents the exact number of times Jesus refers to himself in the Gospels and early texts as the Son of Man. It is, by a landslide, the title he used most often to describe himself. But why that specific title? What's the significance? Well, the syllabus explains that this title is deeply, deeply rooted in the ancient prophecy of Daniel chapter 7. That passage presents a divine figure who is destined to rule literally all nations, peoples, and languages with an everlasting dominion. So according to the text, when Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, he's actively motivating his people. He's encouraging them to overcome their present struggles by promising that they will actually partner with him in ruling the earth when that ancient prophecy is finally fulfilled. Which brings us to part 4, decoding the imagery and visualizing this majesty. Now that we've established the who, we've got to decode the intensely visual, almost overwhelming imagery used in the first chapter. This section of the text is just incredibly rich in sensory details. John's visionary experience uses striking physical descriptions to communicate some incredibly deep theological truths about Jesus' character, his emotions, and his actions. The key takeaway here? Every single detail is viewed as intentional. None of it is accidental. The syllabus systematically breaks these distinct traits right down for us. When he's called the Alpha and Omega, that signifies his completeness and total deity. The first and the last, that actually emphasizes his humanity, being the first man raised from the dead. His priestly garments show us he's a sympathetic high priest offering nearness to God, while that sharp two-edged sword, that represents a king boldly commanding the removal of all resistance to his rule. Let's zoom in on a couple of these specific visual metaphors. Take his eyes like a flame of fire. The text suggests this isn't just about him being intimidating. It symbolizes a burning desire of love and intense passion. It represents this penetrating knowledge that sees the absolute truth of every situation, feeling deep, profound love for his people, while at the exact same time destroying everything that hinders that love. Similarly, a voice described as the sound of many waters or a loud trumpet carries immense weight. The syllabus notes that this represents his absolute authority to gather his people together, to issue very real warnings of impending judgment, and to definitively announce his return. It's a voice that literally cannot be ignored or drowned out by the noise of the world. And then we have the description of his head and hair being white as wool or snow. The curriculum makes it clear this isn't just a physical trait to show that he's old. It's a direct metaphorical connection to God the Father, the Ancient of Days mentioned back in Daniel. It signifies his eternal existence, absolute purity, and just profound, unshakable wisdom. Finally, we land at part 5, the ARK method. This is where we put it all into practice. Because now that we've decoded all this majestic imagery, the syllabus thankfully transitions from theological theory into everyday application. It provides us with a highly specific tool to interact with those 30 descriptions we talked about earlier. It's an acronym called the ARK method, and it's practically designed to turn your study into action, especially during times of intense pressure. ARK. It breaks down into 3 actionable steps: agreement, revelation, and keeping the prophecy. The syllabus argues that by actively working through these 3 steps, a reader's actual spirit is transformed. You move from feeling dull and fearful to feeling strong and peaceful, even in the face of immense global chaos. So, step 1 is agreement. This is where you take a phrase you've just learned, something like, "You are the faithful witness," or "You have eyes of fire," and you actively declare it right back to him in prayer. The source emphasizes doing this with genuine affection and gratitude. You are essentially agreeing out loud with the core truths identified in the text. Step 2 is revelation. This simply means asking for a deeper, personal understanding of these exact metaphors. For instance, the syllabus suggests praying something like, "Show me your glory as the ruler of all kings," or "Teach me more about what it actually means that you are the firstborn from the dead." It's an active, hungry pursuit of deeper insight. And finally, the K, keeping the prophecy. This means making a firm resolve to let these theological truths dictate your real-world, everyday actions, like, say, committing to resist immorality specifically because of the purifying nature of his feet like fine brass. It's all about anchoring your everyday, practical decisions in the visual majesty of the text. Well, thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. Based on this incredibly fascinating and structured syllabus, we are left with a real paradigm-shifting question. If the ultimate goal of these vivid, often terrifying prophecies is actually to reveal a magnificent obsession, to showcase the man behind the plan, how does actively decoding and applying these majestic traits shift your entire perspective on what's to come?